Hello, I'm Julie Dahlke from Hamline Church, and I've been asked to spend a little time and talk about a subject very near to my heart, which is the spiritual practice of centering prayer. And Heather Grantham asked me to make this short video. I was only too happy to do so. Centering prayer is a big part of my own spiritual practice, and the sharing of that prayer with various people at Hamline Church has meant a lot to me over the years. I first heard of centering prayer in the early 2000s when at my previous church, Church of the Good Shepherd, the minister there, Pastor Peter Dahlke, was very involved with spiritual practices involving contemplation, meditation, and centering prayer. So I learned a lot from him. He led 2 times of prayer at Church of the Good Shepherd for many years, and I think later on in the decade, Beth Beatty helped him in that effort quite a bit. So I learned about centering prayer. I read about it, went to some meetings and partial retreats, short half-day retreats, but I didn't engage a lot in centering prayer in practices at that time. Those were years of small kids and rec sports and many distractions, and I did not establish a prayer practice that was very consistent during that time. But in the last decade, I've had a little more time and brought more commitment to the spiritual practice of centering prayer in my own life. And for the last few years have led 2 times of centering prayer at Hamline Church, one on Wednesday during the lunch hour and one on Sunday prior to church. And I've tried to maintain a personal prayer practice a few times a week as well. Centering prayer takes a lot of its inspiration from the life and the writings of Thomas Merton. And Thomas Keating was a man who brought a lot of that focus on centering prayer to the consciousness of Americans. Both Thomas Merton and Thomas Keating were Catholic monks. Merton was a little bit earlier in the 20th century. Keating and several others were more involved in the writings and speaking, and again bringing the concept of contemplative Christian prayer to the consciousness of many, many people. Thomas Keating told a story about how his efforts largely began in the 60s and 70s while he was at a St. Joseph's Abbey in Massachusetts. There were many people at that time that were searching, especially young people, searching for a spiritual path, for a spiritual way. And during that search, they would often settle on Buddhism and Buddhist practices of meditation and contemplation as part of fulfilling their spiritual needs and their searching. And some of those people would stop at the Abbey at St. Joseph's in Massachusetts and say, "Hey, can you show me the way to the nearest Buddhist retreat center and visitation center?" And Thomas Keating went to his colleagues and said, "These people have a long, rich history of contemplative prayer in the Christian tradition, going back hundreds and hundreds of years that they're not aware of. And they're searching out practices because they haven't been informed of the practice that's in the Christian tradition that they grew up in." And so he took it upon himself, and several other people did as well, to bring the knowledge of that contemplative prayer and to form it into the centering prayer as we know it now, into a means of prayer that would be translatable and relevant to the people he was talking to at that time in the latter part of the 20th century and certainly on into today. I did write a couple of definitions of centering prayer, so we talk about it as if it's something, but the definition of centering prayer is going to vary a lot from person to person. There are some commonalities, however. Wikipedia, source of great information, both good and bad, says centering prayer is a method of meditation used by Christianity that places a strong emphasis on interior silence. The website Contemplative Outreach, which is home to many pieces of great information and resources on centering prayer, says, "Centering prayer is a receptive method of silent prayer that prepares us to receive the gift of contemplation." Cynthia Bourgeault, who's a very wise woman who's written and spoken a lot on the subject of centering prayer, says, "Genuine prayer is based on recognizing the origin of all that exists and opening ourselves to it." basic broad definition of prayer, opening your heart to the presence of God. And one of my favorite short, pithy little definitions, centering prayer is saying yes in silence. I hope I've created some interest in somebody in looking into centering prayer more, and I want to say hi to all the people who have engaged in this practice with me over the years. You mean a lot to me. The practice means a lot to me, and the community means a lot to me. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, please call at any point, and at some point, our prayer practice will not be strictly virtual, and I am very much looking forward to seeing all of you in person in our beautiful church soon. Thank you.